Now, I want to talk to you about what we're doing to this country again, because yet again, we've done it. Australians have managed to treat their fellow Australians like mugs. Our pandemic madness has seen more people treated appallingly. More families suffer unnecessary inconvenience and trauma. It's rude, it's disrespectful, it does not reflect our national values, and it's so dumb, just so silly, just so out of proportion to the COVID-19 threat that it's beyond comprehension, really. A flight from Melbourne arrived in Darwin late yesterday afternoon, and while the passengers were in the air, the Northern Territory government declared parts of Melbourne as pandemic hotspots. So after arriving in Darwin, some of these passengers suddenly had a choice: go into compulsory quarantine camp for 14 days or turn around and fly back to Melbourne. Imagine your reaction.
It's upsetting. After 3 years, like, you can't see your own grandson. So, yeah, and I can't do much about it.
Basically, we rocked up and then they said over the intercom that some government officials would be talking to us. And then while we were mid-air, they declared that it was a hotspot.
Now, the Territory has done this to people, much like Western Australia treated people last year, and South Australia too treated a couple of plane loads of people last year. The Territory has done this to people on the basis of parts of Melbourne being pinpointed as COVID hotspots. There is one coronavirus case in Melbourne. We know where it came from. A worker picked it up at hotel quarantine. That is not a hotspot. That is one person with a virus. To treat other Australians like this is just intolerable, unacceptable. It's dumb. This risk, if there is any at all, is tiny. It is minuscule. In the incredibly unlikely event that anyone took the virus from Melbourne to Darwin, it could be dealt with testing, with vigilance and contact tracing. That would contain it. The disease, as we keep saying, is benign or mild in more than 95% of cases. This panic and overreach is just not warranted in Australia. We are on top of this. Think about it. If they really believe some people on that plane needed to go into quarantine, as some of them have done, then surely they all had to go. The Territory says these people present a risk of coronavirus infection, yet they've just been sitting on a plane for 4 hours with dozens of other people, and yet those people don't have to go into quarantine. This exposes the idiocy of this. If any are compromised and need isolation after that flight, then surely they all need it. Just get real. Stop treating people so poorly, for heaven's sake. What have we done to our country? Perth will come out of lockdown later tonight still, 5 days after locking down for nothing. There has been no additional case since one hotel quarantine worker tested positive. What shameful harm Premier Mark McGowan has imposed on his own people for nothing. He has locked down his whole state for a week, probably because he's worried about the political consequences of an infection or two leading up to an election. Sound gropers have just been locked at home for a week to ensure McGowan doesn't have to risk explaining a few infections in an election campaign. National Cabinet met on all of this again today, and we're no closer to getting national coordination, national standards around border closures and lockdowns. It seems clear the Prime Minister would like that. It seems clear he's frustrated by the states, but in the end he's just asking them to lift their game. And that's pretty hard for him to do too, when he shut down flights from New Zealand for a few days based on a single case last month there. Still, he is hoping that Brisbane and Perth in particular won't be shut next time they get a case.
Both Western Australia and Queensland hadn't had as much game time for their systems with their contact tracing and things like that as the other states had. But what's been proved to be the case over the course of the last few days, whether it was in Western Australia or indeed Queensland earlier in the piece, they stood up. So we would hope that next time there wouldn't be such a need, because they know their systems work.
Yeah, we live in hope, eh? So there we have it. This is the situation in Australia at the moment. In our population of 25 million people, there are 2 cases of community transmission. One is a hotel quarantine worker in Perth, and one is a hotel quarantine worker in Melbourne. Yet despite just 2 cases from known sources, there are people forced into quarantine in Darwin, others sent back to Melbourne, people delayed from returning to their jobs in Melbourne CBD, 2 million people waiting to be released from lockdown in Western Australia, but only to go into a new regime of restrictions and mask wearing. Mark McGowan and other political leaders keep telling us they are out to crush the virus. They are crushing something, all right. Let's hope the nation's spirits can lift again, and soon.